This is Talk. Welcome to the home of common sense. Welcome, also delighted to say, Conservative commentator Benedict Spence. A very, very, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Always throws me when our guests are on different days than their usual days, because I'm now going to be convinced all day that it's Wednesday, but it's not.
We do this. We all collude to make sure that you keep you on your toes, make you think maybe you're losing your marbles.
I am losing my marbles. I am. Yes, exactly. No longer tired anymore. I don't get up at 4 anymore. It's fabulous. Thanks, Mike. Anyway, Benedict, so much to talk about at home and abroad. Let's start with abroad, though. Let's start with the Gaza ceasefire deal. And now, not 100% over the line yet. They're still arguing about what are the phases. There are 3 phases. We've had this sort of announcement from Joe Biden. I mean, look, the Qatari Prime Minister gets way too much credit, this guy. Hamas have agreed. We understand, we're going to get agreement from the Israeli cabinet. A majority would certainly agree, even if right-wing members do leave the cabinet, not expected. That deal can still go ahead. Starts with a complete ceasefire. I think we had 73 people killed in Gaza. Not in Israel. The only reason not in Israel is not because they're not firing rockets from Gaza, it's because they've got the defences. It doesn't mean that they're not also fighting. But a complete ceasefire starting on Sunday, the withdrawal of Israeli forces from populated areas of Gaza, and the release starting, we hope, on Sunday, that is the hope, of hostages, including women and children under 19, the elderly over 50, and the injured or sick civilians. We're told that the first phase will be 33 civilians. Now, that should include the British-Israeli woman, Emily Damari. Also, I mean, we just hope they are still alive. There's a 1-year-old and a 5-year-old, Kafir and Ariel, who are still being held captive as well with their mother, Shiri. Palestinian civilians will be told they can return to their neighbourhoods, such as their homes still exist, and a massive surge in humanitarian aid. Phase 2, more than a month later, a permanent end to war in exchange for the release of the remaining living hostages. Israeli forces withdrawing from Gaza completely. A temporary ceasefire then becomes permanent. Phase 3, final remains of dead hostages to be returned to their families, so at least they can know for sure they are not being held captive still, and a major reconstruction plan for Gaza. So, question I'm asking this morning, is this a good deal?
No.
And is it for whom? Right, before we get... Well, you've heard your answer. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000, text 87222. Get in touch on X at TalkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs 1 standard network rate message. I looked at this yesterday, Benedict. I thought it was such as we know. This is a great deal for Hamas.
Yeah,
it's a terrible deal for Israel.
Hamas get to survive. They get to live on another day. I think it's a curious thing. I think it's a political gesture by... It's not the Biden administration. It's Donald Trump. It's his incoming Middle East envoy, Stephen Witkoff, has been sort of doing the shuttle diplomacy, taking over from Antony Blinken. And by the sounds of it, frankly, putting the screws on Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israelis, which I think has caught the Israelis slightly off guard because they thought that the Trump administration was going to be much more amenable to them. I think short-term, that's because Trump needs a win. He needs to be able to say to the people he was able to take from the Democrats on the issue of Gaza, look, I can get this done. I'm
the peace president.
Yeah, I'm the guy that makes this stuff happen. I also think it's because there possibly isn't going to be a deal on Ukraine anywhere near as fast as the MAGA base would like there to be. So he needs to be able to say, look, I can get these things done, but this is a little bit more complex. You're going to have to help me out with this. But I also think... if this is a case of the Republican Party putting the screws on the Israeli right, this is not going to have the intended effect that many people on the pro-Gaza side would like. This is going to force Israeli politics further to the right, because not just Netanyahu, but his coalition partners, Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, they will look at this and say, they will say, these people are not our friends, and we need to further decouple ourselves. Joe Biden had a lot of trouble over the last couple of years trying to put pressure on the Israeli government, because the Israelis have recognized the direction of travel in the US. Yeah. They need it to be less dependent on the US. Yeah. And what the Israeli right will now say is, well, we need to be even less dependent on the US. We cannot have it that a Republican president can do this to us.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. I mean, again, I think, it's been a lot of very strong military support in the end from the West, from, the moments when Iran attacked Israel, that support was there. But so much when it comes to the words, we have not seen either America under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and we've certainly not seen under our prime ministers here, certainly under Keir Starmer, strong enough language supporting Israel. No matter what. The sort of support that we gave America when they suffered 9/11 is what we gave in the Afghanistan war. For all its faults, Afghanistan, it was perfectly justified to go in and take out the Taliban, who were supporting, basically allowing Al-Qaeda to train and live there freely. Now, it seems to me this. I've always said this: if it was my family member who was held hostage, 100%, I'll take any deal. Give up a million people in Gaza. Give up. I don't care. I want my child back. End of. Nothing to discuss. That is why hostage families. That's the reason why hostage families don't do this. We've had a policy in the West that we don't negotiate with hostages. Sorry, with terrorists. We don't pay ransoms. Okay, we say that often. It does actually happen. But here's the thing: we didn't negotiate with Al-Qaeda. We didn't negotiate with the Taliban. We didn't negotiate with ISIS. We went in and destroyed them. I was delighted to hear that, the Defence Secretary appointee, Mario Ruby, the Secretary of State appointee for Donald Trump, both fully. We want the full destruction of Hamas, which is the only moral viewpoint to take. They are terrorists. They are a danger to their own people and to the people of Israel. Oh, by the way, and us, everyone in the West, everybody, including completely ordinary, moderate Muslims going about their peaceful daily lives. So allowing Hamas to basically rebuild, we're going to get aid in, reconstruction in. Where do you think that money's going to go? It's going to go to Hamas. The idea that we're going to have some sort of moderate Palestinian authority in charge. There isn't a moderate. There are more or less extreme organisations. They all believe in the destruction of Israel. Lots of talk about a two-state solution. Well, Israel has offered a two-state solution many, many times. It's been on the cards. The international bodies have have negotiated for it. The people who don't want a two-state solution are pretty much every organisation involved with the Palestinians who want a one-state solution, and that one state doesn't include Israel. I don't know where this goes from here. Look, let's get these hostages home. Let's get these babies home. Let's get these young women home. God knows what's been happening to them. I'm afraid we do know what's been happening to them. It is horrific. Yes, let's get aid to people who are desperate, innocent people in Gaza who are desperate. But at the end of the day, we just start again. Gaza, Hamas said they wanted to commit October the 7th again, the day after.
The war's not over. There's a lot, on all the front pages, there's a lot of sort of self-congratulations. This is literally just a 6-week pause. There's no guarantee that the next phases will come through. There's no guarantee that this will even last. And I don't think it's acceptable to many in Israel for Hamas to continue to exist. But we also have to remember it's not really acceptable for a lot of the people outside of Israel in the rest of the Middle East as well. There talk about security guarantees being provided by Egypt and of a massive rebuilding project, and that means money, and where will that come from? The Gulf states. But there will need to be security guarantees for that money to come in the first place, which is that Hamas is not left in charge. And, we're talking here about it potentially going back into the hands of Hamas. That, you're not going to get the GCC saying, yes, we'll greenlight billions in rebuilding if it goes straight to an ally of Iran. That's not actually going to happen. So it's not even in their interest. As much as they need to, put out a public face for their own civilian populations and say, yes, of course, we champion the Palestinian cause, these people do not want Hamas to be in charge. Israel would not have done what it's done if it hadn't had the sotto voce green light from other capitals around the Gulf. And, it's not as if any of them, having signed the Abraham Accords, it's not like any of those said, well, we're going to withdraw our ambassadors. There was no talk about the Egyptians or the Jordanians going into Israel. It's not a thing anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Egyptian, again, everyone thought, it's outrageous that people can't leave Gaza. Yeah, the Egyptian borders, they've got stronger protections on their border than the Israelis do. It is extreme. I want to hear from you. Whose side, well, not whose side you're on. Everyone should be on the side of innocent people not getting killed. I'm sorry, I don't know how anyone could be. I genuinely don't know how you can morally not be on Israel's side. I really, really don't. Israel destroying Hamas is for the benefit of the Palestinian people. They've not destroyed Hamas. Again, a lot of talk people, BBC had their usual sort of, tens and tens and tens of thousands of people being killed. Yeah, well, probably 20,000 of those are Hamas fighters. Glad they're dead. I would happily shoot them dead myself. I'd be doing the world a good deed. I don't understand why people find this complicated. Not a single child in Gaza would have died. Not a single child would have died if October the 7th hadn't been launched and if Hamas fighters did not hide themselves in schools, in hospitals, build tunnels under apartment buildings and quite deliberately use innocent men, women and children, but particularly children, as their human shields. And by the way, they've got a tunnel network bigger than the London Tube. If they wanted to keep all those children safe, they could have them in the tunnels, but they don't. The only children that have been in the tunnels are either they're their own children or the hostage children taken from Israel. So I'm sorry. I'm very, very sad for the loss of life. It's all on Hamas. It's as simple as that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. We've got lots of great guests on this later in the show. Also going to play that clip of Joe Biden last night, who apparently thinks that it was Hezbollah who committed the massacres on October the 7th. I mean, the idea that Joe Biden was closely involved in these negotiations is for the birds, isn't it? Let's also talk about war zones here. Our NHS A&E corridors. I've had the misfortune of having to attend A&E in the last year, and it was just incredibly slow, but not water. My main takeaway was, does anyone here speak English? I mean, I genuinely was really quite stunned, you know, but I mean, does anyone here speak English as a first language? I mean,
No.
I know we've got a lot of people working from abroad in the NHS. Well, you know, great. But maybe we wouldn't need so many if we didn't have quite so many people here who I just thought it was. I just thought it was quite bizarre. I've also had two family members in the last couple of years who one stuck on couldn't get an ambulance with a broken pelvis, 6'5", having had a back accident, being kept on a trolley for 24 hours in absolute agony, not treated. Can I point out that a pelvic break has a 20% chance of death because of chance of fractures getting into your bloodstream and like it's incredibly serious. Left in a corridor for 24 hours. But also another elderly relative in their 70s with facing heart and breathing problems, stuck in an ambulance for some 4 hours outside A&E, unable to get in. It's real. It's absolutely happening. This report from the Royal College of Nursing, hundreds of pages long, 5,000 nurses polled, telling their experiences, talking about, patients just routinely in corridors, blocking fire exits, women forced to go through miscarriages in a corridor, no privacy, with a drunk vomiting and shouting abuse just sort of next to them, patients dying, no one notices, no time to deal with the dead patient's body because you're so frazzled, and nurses dealing with up to 40 patients in one responsibility for them in one go. It's untenable. It's untenable. What do we do to fix it, though? I mean,
what do you do to fix it?
More money! More money! Isn't that the answer?
More money thrown on the bonfire, but also, by the way, we're not going to, sort of reduce migration numbers. We're not going to train any more doctors and nurses. We're just going to give NHS managers more money to do what? I'm not entirely sure. I'm sort of resigned to this, is the thing. This is just us now. This was not unforeseen. We've been told for years, if you continue to import hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, and you do not increase capacity, if the population continues to age at the current pace and you do not increase capacity, if you do not train more doctors and nurses and you underpay them so that they then go overseas because they can all read and speak English and they can tell what they're paid in Australia and Canada, that this is going to lead to a major bottleneck, which is what we've got. And it's not simply about saying the NHS is underfunded. Well, perhaps it is, perhaps it isn't, but there are far more fundamental things here, which is that the system as it currently is was not built for the sheer volume of people. And I'm sorry, lots of people will say that things like migration are a secondary issue. No, people do recognise that this is one of the few, if not the only places in the world where you can just rock up and they'll treat you
really
for free. I'm sorry,
I wouldn't expect to get free healthcare anywhere. I always have full travel insurance. I don't think anyone should be allowed in the country without travel insurance. And everyone will say, well, people can't afford it. I'm not sure we want those people coming to visit. I think if you can't afford 50 quid or 30 quid for some health insurance while you're here, I'm not sure you're going to be a big spender.
I've just got to be honest. I'm using this word a lot, half-wit, but that is the attitude that we take to policy in this country. It is as if it has been dreamed up by somebody who is not all there. They cannot get from point A to point B and see the issues that might be there. They just think, immigration means GDP go up. Fantastic
but
news.
Also our health service can't survive with that. But it's funny because every other sodding health service in the world manages to survive without having, with foreign doctors and foreign nurses. I've got no issue with. I've had plenty of doctors and nurses over the years who have come from other countries. I feel very strongly about the training being verified. There are lots of question marks over training in India, by the way.
Huge.
Massive scam in terms of how you can get in, how you can, I would say it's fascinating. Reuters, that far right blog. Reuters reported a few years back that 1 in 4 doctors practicing in India as doctors have not got a medical degree. Okay, so, but yeah, we import lots of our doctors from India. But one of the crucial things is the language barrier, and it is a very, very big issue. This is, I mean, it's like the whole, what we can do. Genuinely, doctors' training has extra training for doctors who are dyslexic. I'm really sorry you're dyslexic. I'm not sure that you being dyslexic and you being a doctor works for me.
Yeah, I'm sorry. The sheer number of medical malpractice, doctors and nurses being struck off because of medical malpractice, the disproportionate numbers who are overseas
75%.
Yeah, huge.
75%.
Why on earth are we sitting there saying that this is an acceptable thing? But there's also a moral component to this. I'm sorry, and this is the thing that really winds me up. There are more Ghanaian medics working in the NHS than there are medics in Ghana. That is morally unacceptable. You cannot take doctors and nurses trained by a third world country, which has much worse healthcare outcomes, and say, oh, great, we'll have those, thanks very much. That is human capital strip mining. It is morally unacceptable. Completely Just pay your own doctors and nurses, train enough of them, so you don't have to nick those from the third world. We literally limit
the number that we train in this country. Right now, there are a whole bunch of kids at school who are predicting a load of straight A's in maths and sciences. And they're not getting offers to study medicine at university because their fees are only $9.5 grand. But there are loads and loads of kids from China and India and Nigeria and elsewhere, and they will be getting offers to study medicine at our universities because they're going to pay 30 grand a year. It's really that simple.
Morally bankrupt.
Exactly. I want to hear from you on this. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000, text 87222, get in touch on X at TalkTV. About this harrowing report. What is your reaction? I mean, the idea that our services, as our bed occupancy in our hospitals, 96%. Now, in most hospitals in Europe, it's around 80%.
Yeah.
It's around 80%.
Somebody at the Treasury will be very clever and say, but that means that we're sort of constantly not overspending. And you just think...
No, it's just not how it works.
It does.
They don't, absolutely. Can I ask you also about front page of the Sun today? This is about a rapper on BBC is Jimmy's killer. We all remember back, gosh, I mean, it's way back now, 2008, the murder of a 16-year-old schoolboy, the gentle giant Jimmy Mizen. The man who was convicted of his murder is, well, I mean, clearly not remorseful. He served his time in prison, yes, to be fair, minimum of 14 years, but he is now a drill rapper. Drill rappers, for the elderly at the back. No, it's not my music either. Who am I kidding? But basically, they're the guys who are like, celebrating, violence, glorifying gangs, stabbing, having your gun. The lyrics are all about, and we know that there are actually murders that happen on our street, stabbings that happen on our street, because one drill rapper from one gang says this, one says another. Look, the lad that was murdered on the school bus only the other day, he was one of these sort of grime drill rappers, as a young 14-year-old lad, and three arrests have now been made. But that lad was, had been carrying a machete into school. He had a string of offences himself. He'd been in care. He'd been living on the streets. I mean, there's a lot of victimhood and danger in these people. Yeah. But the BBC. They're sort of, their BBC One Extra, Radio 1 Extra, which is basically urban code.
Unlistenable,
for you and me. It's not aimed at us, but basically they absolutely celebrate this and glorify this kind of music. They've been playing this guy. He wears a balaclava. I wonder why he's wearing a balaclava. Doesn't want to be identified. I wonder why. Yeah, because he's a convicted killer.
That's because he's an Irish Republican.
His lyrics, I have to say, his lyrics are actually very clever. They're actually very... I mean, the lyrics, as poetry, are actually very good. But they're about glorifying murder. They're glorifying the murder he committed. The BBC censors people all the time. Oh, you can't say that. No, trans woman isn't a man. Climate deniers. I mean, remember Frankie Goes to Hollywood and Relax. I mean, you know what I mean? There's censorship all the time from the BBC, but happy to play drill rap from a murderer celebrating the murder he committed of a 16-year-old innocent boy.
Yeah. Baby, it's cold outside. No, I'm going to shoot you in the head and then stab your associates. Oh, that's completely acceptable. And it's gritty and it's urban and it's up and coming and the person has quite a high IQ. Therefore, we should glorify... I'm sorry, this is... once upon a time, we weren't allowed to listen to rock and roll because it might corrupt the youth. Now
we see Elvis Presley's pelvis.
Now the taxpayer has to foot up this stuff, actually has to, pay for it. And otherwise, you're not allowed to listen to other people's output.
We're both strong advocates of freedom of speech, but the but you're actually not allowed to profit from your crimes.
I've got nothing wrong with people actually rapping about things. You say that it's very, it's very clever. A lot of it is, but there's no question that it's also fomenting a culture beyond it. If they were just talking about things and it was about artistic ideals, fine. But people do get stabbed in gang wars between different drill rappers, and then they rap about it. Often, funnily enough, in prison. They record it on, I don't know what they're recording it on, but they send it out and it gets put out. It is mind-blowing. It's a culture, and it's not the music that's necessarily the issue, it's the gang culture around it.
Question. If it were young white boys...
It would be incredibly embarrassing if young white boys were doing this.
If young white boys were doing this, they wouldn't be playing that music, they wouldn't be celebrating it, they'd be criticising it.
Yeah, of course they would.
The rules are different.
Of course they would. Although, I'm telling you right now, it's probably young, white, middle-class, public-educated people at the BBC who are making the decisions to put this stuff on air.
Almost without doubt.